Good morning. Everybody's doing well this morning. My Dharma talk today is on Manjusri, who's a Bodhisattva. This is one of the images that you'll find of him. You notice in his right arm, there appears to be a sword. Manjusri is one of the four great Bodhisattvas. We have three in bronze here on the property. And the other one is in, I guess it is, what's Guan made of, Master?
Marble.
Marble,
Mm-hmm.
which is down on the backside of the pond. I'm sure everybody knows where that is. We've been talking about these bodhisattvas in Dharma talks for the last couple of months. The four of them are Avalokiteshvara or Guan Yin, the bodhisattva of compassion. Manjusri is the bodhisattva of wisdom. Samattabhadra and Daizang. Manjusri dates back many centuries and is associated with Wantushan Mountain in China, which is southwest of Beijing. Now there's over 150 monasteries on that mountain. The Sanskrit name for the Bodhisattva, the Buddha of wisdom, is Manjusri. So the sword that is depicted in many of the older models or photographs of Manjusri represents the blade of wisdom, discriminating wisdom, power over evil, cutting off of attachments, or cutting through the roots of ignorance, which is the way to obtain Buddhahood. We often chant about samisa when we're having worldly or of the flesh happiness. It's called samisa sukha. When we're anxious and not enjoying reality, we are having worldly of the flesh distress, samisa dukkha. When we're having a fleeting moment of peaceful balance, free of anxiety, we're having worldly of the flesh equanimity, or samisa upekkha. Manjusri was given instructions by the Buddha on bodhicitta, which is the mind, citta, and awakening, bodhi. The core concept for the Mahayana bodhisattvas. Compassion and wisdom generate Buddhahood, which is then used to assist all sentient beings to enlightenment. That's the major difference between Theravadan Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, is that the Bodhisattva will obtain enlightenment, but not leave samsara. He or she will stay and vow not to enter nibbana or nirvana until all sentient beings are enlightened. Manjusri was said by the Buddha to dwell in what's called Sarangama Samadhi. This is also called Prajnaparamita, or perfection of wisdom concentration. The Buddha called this mental state the essence of the nature of the Buddha. These four equalities are, what they mean are that all dharmas are equal because they are illusory. All dharmas are empty The sutra goes on to say, how do you understand all sentient beings? They are merely provisional designations. If truly observed with ultimate truth, these sentient beings or provisional designations have no location. These sentient beings are all one self. I called Manjushri the rebel because he was, unlike a lot of the bodhisattvas, he would go to the people and teach to the people. And it's said that he had supernatural powers so that he could come into this room and be one of us and teach on the level that we're at, just like the Buddha. And it's also said that he didn't discriminate, that his code was diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, as we call it today. He didn't care what your age was, your occupation, your sex. And so he was a rebel, and the other monastics, some of them tried to oust him and knock him down from his powerful position or his respected position, because he would go down to the level of the people. One of the things that Manjusri is known for is non-duality. And one of the sayings is that all worlds are equal, all Buddhas are equal, all dharmas are equal, all sentient beings are equal. I abide in that. And that takes us to the four equalities that I talked about. That the ultimate truth is that we're all just provisional designations, that there is no real self. So I want to thank Don Shushu for helping me with this presentation, and also Venerable Kong Yin, who gave me a transcript of a chapter called The Dharma Gate of Manjushri and translated it into English, because Chinese wouldn't have done me any good. So that's the basis of the information that I just gave you. And so if we look at Manjushri, we look at someone who talked about non-dualism, no self, emptiness. If we look at the three marks of existence, we have dukkha, we have anicca, and we have anatta. So dukkha, we all know, is unsatisfactoriness or suffering in the broadest sense. Anicca is impermanence. Impermanence is basically everything subject to change. And we can understand those two concepts. The third is anatta, or non-self, or no self, or no permanent existence. So when the world is burning around you, when things are collapsing in your world, impermanence will slap you in the face, because you know the concept. But when it hits home to you, that's when meditation is, if you've practiced meditation, the slap in your face will be less of a sting. Let's put it that way. While impermanence is important, the other three marks of existence are equally important. Otherwise, they wouldn't be three. As I said, impermanence is easy to grasp. Everything arises, everything passes away. Every conditioned phenomenon is unstable. The way I was taught, the only unconditioned phenomenon is nibbana, or nirvana. When you become enlightened, then there's no passing away of that state. The Manjushri, one of the things that Manjushri instructed and taught was that the Buddha Dharma emphasizes or is taught by way of universal truths. So if you look at the Dharma, if you look at the sutras, the core in each one is some kind of universal truth. For example, the 3 marks of existence. And it's interesting to note that the respect that Manjusri had, some of it came from the fact that he actually was an instructor of the Buddha. He first became interested in enlightenment in the distant past. Well, what does that mean? So I tried to find out, what does the distant past mean? The only thing I could find was that it was, excuse me, as many kalpas as there are grains of sand in all of the Ganges River. So a kalpa is, I think, about 10,000 years, the best we can estimate today. So that this distant past was really distant, so to speak. So how do we try to establish this this condition of dwelling in what is really the ultimate consciousness that is no self? How do we train ourselves to find no self? We have 2 tools at our disposal. That's our time and our attention. And then we just practice. We practice meditation. Meditation and the process of meditation provides this mental stability. And if we practice significantly or over time, then we find that when the truth of impermanence, the truth of suffering kind of lands on our shoulders, we're more resilient. It's almost as if we have some kind of superpower or an armor that protects us. And I'm not saying that you can meditate away every problem you have, but the idea is to have the ability to look past it, accept it as a reality. And I mean, there are times when you work around a problem, obviously, but you can't let your life go to hell in a handbasket because you're experiencing what we know we're going to experience, that's suffering. And that's where the power of mindfulness, the process and practice of mindfulness comes in. The ability to practice with the small moments in life, when you have the careless driver that cuts you off in traffic, when you have the spill of coffee on your shirt as you're getting ready for work, or worse, you spill it in your lap on the way to work. If you use these small moments, and they don't have to be negative, they can be the birds outside, observing the birds, the song of a bird, the blue sky, that can give you a ring of the mindfulness bell and bring you back to living your life and not ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. Because when you do that, you're really in a dreamscape. You're not really living your life. Like when I was meditating earlier, I'm trying to meditate. I think, oh, got to give this talk. I'm nervous. Then I've got to get home because I've got to help my wife because we're having people for dinner. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be meditating. Go back to the breath. So it's a process. It's important to understand that it's a real process. And there's a principle, and I think I've talked to you guys about this before. It's called the specific adaptation to implied demand. When you're in the gym, you're lifting weights, you don't start off with 300 pounds, right? You start off with whatever you can pick up. And then over time, your muscles have a specific adaptation to the demand that you place on the muscle. So that you lift and lift, your muscles get stronger, sometimes bigger. The brain has the same quality, only it's called plasticity, neuroplasticity. So this mindfulness practice, the process and practice, is an exercise for your brain. The more you do it, the more it becomes the default position. And so that's why it's so important to practice, practice, practice. So when you are practicing and you note that there's an emotion that rises up and takes over your mind, then the skillful means is to investigate, right? I mean, we all know that the Eightfold Path, and we know that the 7 factors of awakening, and one of those is that you need to investigate. And I think you can apply that skillful means to investigating your own mind. For example, you spill coffee on yourself, or you get cut off in traffic. If you take a second to note your emotion, let's say you're angry, that would be a common emotion that you'd have if somebody almost runs you off the road. You can become that anger. You can spend your time daydreaming about that anger, or you can investigate it, pull back, look at the anger. Where's it come from? It has no seat. There's no center for that anger. It's self-created. So if you can pause a little bit and realize that you are more than that one emotion, then it can help you soften that particular reaction. And that's the importance. Trying to get that pause in the reaction, time to investigate. And as I said, meditation provides this degree of freedom, really. And another tool that you can use is to understand that everything happens because of causes and conditions. Everything. And there's a debate on whether we actually even have free will. Is it free will, or is it based on causes and conditions from distant past? For example, let's use the example of road rage. Somebody cuts you off and you get angry. Where does that anger come from? Was it because the guy cut you off, or was it your ego to say, oh no, you're not going to cut me off? I'm so important. I'm the center of my universe. If you can reflect a little bit, perhaps you can have a different outlook. Understanding that causes and conditions, preference, can't say it. Help me. Preface, that's it. Sorry.
It's okay.
Preface all human interactions can lead into the direction of tapering our response. So when something like that happens, what causes us to wake up in the middle of our life? It comes back to our practice, our process of meditation. There's a myth that we rise to the occasion when something happens to us, that we automatically find the skill to react in a certain way, and that we will persevere. But that's just a myth. It's false. If you look at any human performance, It's all based on practice. Practice, practice, practice. Repetition will produce a statistically higher positive outcome or success, no matter how you define success. If you can use mindfulness as your superpower, it will give you the ability to have that pause before you enter into a reactionary mode. We've talked about in the past the ancient, I think it's from the 1st century Savastivadin breathing technique. It's really the circle of life. Rising with the in-breath, abiding, changing, and ceasing. And it starts again, over and over and over. If you look at the abiding is where, for example, you have a ball, you throw the ball into the air. At some point, it stops its ascent, it pauses, and it comes back down. The pause, that's the abiding. That's what you want to look for. That's what you want to look for in every situation. There's an old saying that that when things go south in a performance, the seasoned actor slows down, and the rookie speeds up because of nervousness. It's always a mysterious process determining what causes you to wake up during your day. Because let's face it, the statistical research shows, and this is an old study, this goes back to 2012, the statistical research shows that 46% of people are not living their life. They're in a dreamscape in the past or a dreamscape in the future. And so if you look back at that study in 2012, that was a long time ago. I think with everybody's cell phones now, it might be higher than 50%. When we recognize a thought as a thought, observe it, accept it, let it go, you notice how it changes. It's part of impermanence. Even the thought has a limited existence. And as I indicated, this observing or pulling back from the thought provides this abiding, this pause from reaction. And that gives you the feeling of a bit of freedom. It's a glimpse into the realization that your mind is much wider than one single emotion, and that you don't have to identify with that emotion. The opposite of that is to contract around that emotion, that anger, and become that anger, which usually doesn't. One of my friends who was a former Marine said that they taught them, if you stand up in anger, you sit down in defeat. The core, and this comes back to Manjusri, the core of all of this revolves around the ability to see the self and the ego as illusions. The true nature of mind is egoless or selfless. That's what the Buddha taught us. That's what Manjusri says. But it's so hard. It's so hard. Of the 3 marks of impermanence, the non-self is the most difficult one to grasp, to understand. I mean, we can say the true nature of all of us is selfless. We just have to figure out a way to discover this particular universal truth. So how do we get there? This understanding of emptiness or non-dualism, anatta, the 3rd mark of existence. I've been trying to figure this out, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole to try and figure out what's the easiest way. Maybe easy is not the correct word, but what is a way to figure out how to start practicing meditation in a non-dualistic fashion. Because I came to meditation because of problems in my past, and I sought a way to lessen those problems, right? But that is really a meditation from a dualistic perspective. Because if I'm meditating on, I want to reduce my anxiety, I want to reduce my blood pressure, my heart rate, then it's all about me, right? So practicing it, meditation from a non-dualistic standpoint is a lot different. I think it's a lot different. I'm told that the way to do this, to find non-dualistic meditation, is to look for the thinker. Try to find the seat of your attention. Try to find, where does the thought come from? Where's the center? What's the basis? And you come to realize that there is no center. And that's the whole basis of emptiness. That's the whole basis of non-self. I think when you tumble onto this and practice it for a while, you're going to see that it's always there. It's just the way the universe is. It's the way consciousness is. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's a universal truth. Consciousness does not have a center, and certainly not the self. For example, there's no me ruminating over a problem. The paradox is that we all seek enlightenment, but the path is right in front of us. The truth is right in front of us. And what's this? There's a Doshin saying, or maybe it's a Zen saying, that those that seek never find. And I think that's what this is talking about. It's obviously there. It's a universal truth, but we have this facade of self that prevents us from finding it. Trying our best to drop the subject, the concept of being as a subject, object. That's where dualism, that's where it arises. There's a teacher, I think he's not around anymore. There are people that still teach his techniques. His name is Douglas Harding, and he wrote a book which is called Looking for Your Head. Have you ever tried that? I mean, think about it. If you don't have a mirror, you'll never see your head. I can see Tom's head. I can see Austin's head. I can see Sammy. I can see your head, but I can't see my own. His concept was that the head, your head, opens up into the ultimate truth. Everything you see, ultimate reality, which is an interesting way, and perhaps an interesting, almost childlike maybe, way of looking at the world, but perhaps it is a tool that can be used to figure out how to be non-dual in meditation. The idea is to maintain openness, and that if you can do that, everything else will drop away. And it's also been said that if you're not in this openness state, then you are in your dreamscape. You're not present for your own life. So after all that rambling, I have an assignment. Find your own head. See if you can find your own head. and perhaps look into meditation from a non-dual perspective. Thank you.